So today we're going to be talking about reversible versus irreversible cellular injury. This is one of the most critical topics in pathology. It separates a cell that's able to live and one that's able to die. It's very critical that you understand these topics. By the time this video ends, you're going to understand completely what reversible injury pathophysiology is, irreversible injury pathophysiology, real life and high yield examples, testing for reversible and irreversible damage, clinical relevance, and USMLE practice questions. Our videos are complete guides focusing on very high yield examples for not only in clinic, but also outside of clinic as well. So to start, we're going to talk about reversible injury. The definition: reversible injury occurs when a cell can recover once the stressor is removed. The hallmark is cellular swelling caused by dysfunction on ion pumps. The key mechanisms that you need to understand: hypoxia. So low oxygen disrupts oxidative phosphorylation in mitochondria, leading to decreased ATP production. The ATP depletion, without ATP, which is the cell's fuel, key processes fail. First, the sodium-potassium pump fails. So sodium will accumulate inside the cell, causing water influx and swelling. Additionally, calcium pump failure as well. So there will be an increase in intracellular calcium, which activates damaging enzymes, for example, phospholipases and proteases. So additionally, ribosomal detachments, which decreases protein synthesis. Morphologic changes: cellular swelling, so the cells will enlarge and will be a pale cytoplasm due to water accumulation. There'll be fatty change as well, so the lipid vacuoles in cells, for example, hepatocytes and hypoxia, there'll be fatty accumulation. Consequences of low ATP: like we said, the sodium-potassium pump failure leads to sodium and water buildup. The sodium-potassium pump maintains a high potassium inside the cell and a high sodium outside the cell. In low ATP states, the pump fails and sodium accumulates inside the cell, pulling water inside the cell, which is cellular swelling. This is like a broken sump pump in a basement where water, for example, sodium and water, floods when the pump stops working. Calcium pump failure. So there's going to be calcium overload. The normal function of calcium is to keep outside the cytoplasm or stored in organelles. For example, calcium is normally stored in the mitochondria or the endoplasmic reticulum. In low ATP states, calcium floods the cytoplasm. This activates damaging enzymes like proteases, which break down proteins, phospholipases, which damage cell membranes, endonucleases, which damage DNA, and a good mnemonic is calcium crushes cells, so it unleashes destructive enzymes. Additionally, there'll be a switch to anaerobic glycolysis, which creates lactic acid buildup. Without ATP from oxidative phosphorylation, cells rely on anaerobic glycolysis. Remember this from biochemistry. Consequences: when a cell uses anaerobic glycolysis, it produces lactic acid, decreases the pH, creating acidosis. Acidic environments denature proteins and damage DNA. So lactic, lack of air; acidic, cell despair. Morphologic changes in reversible injury. Morphological changes: you'll see cytosol swelling, loss of microvilli, reduced absorption, and formation of membrane blebs, bulging in the plasma membrane. Like an overfilled water balloon, its surface stretches, bulges, and loses its shape. Rough endoplasmic reticulum swelling. So swollen RER leads to detachment of ribosomes, resulting in decreased protein synthesis. Picture a factory assembly line where workers, the ribosomes, walk off the job. Production, being protein synthesis, comes to a halt. Reversible damage causes mild mitochondrial swelling due to failure of ion balance, but does not rupture the membrane. In irreversible damage, the membrane is not ruptured. Lastly, you're going to see fatty changes, common in organs like the liver and the heart during hypoxia. Lipids accumulate in the cytoplasm due to impaired lipid metabolism. Irreversible injury occurs when cellular damage is so severe that recovery is no longer possible. The hallmark is membrane damage, which ruptures and disrupts critical cell functions and triggers cell death. For example, some key features you'll see in irreversible damage: notice membrane damage. So first, plasma membrane damage. Breakdown of the plasma membrane causes leakage of intracellular contents, such as enzymes, into the extracellular space. Influx of extracellular ions like calcium worsens cellular dysfunction and activates destructive enzymes. For an example, elevated creatine kinase, CK, levels in skeletal muscle injury. For example, rhabdomyolysis indicates plasma membrane damage. When the wall breaks, contents escape. It's important you recognize this because we can test for these contents that are escaping. Additionally, mitochondrial membrane damage. So destruction of the mitochondrial membrane leads to loss of ATP production due to failure of the electron transport chain. Release of pro-apoptotic proteins like cytochrome C triggers programmed cell death. Remember, cytochrome C is normally within the mitochondria and uses normal physiology, but when it leaves, it causes apoptosis. An example is an ischemic liver injury. Hepatocytes release cytochrome C, leading to apoptosis and organ dysfunction. Like a power station explosion, energy production halts and the system collapses. Mitochondria breached, power off. Rupture of the lysosomal releases hydrolytic enzymes like proteases and lipases into the cytoplasm. High calcium levels activate these enzymes, leading to digestion of cellular components. An example is in spinal cord injury. Lysosomal enzymes degrade neurons, accelerating tissue destruction. Like a self-destruct button, the cell is dismantled from within. Lysosomal leak equals cellular collapse. Clinical application. Remember, key enzymes. Once membrane damage has occurred, enzymes leak into the bloodstream. We use specific enzyme tests to identify specific disease processes. For example, we can use cardiac troponin, released during myocardial infarction due to plasma membrane damage in cardiac myocytes. Example, troponin 1 and T are specific markers for heart damage. Liver enzymes like ALT or AST, released into the circulation during hepatocyte necrosis. Additionally, amylase/lipase, elevated during pancreatitis due to enzymatic leakage from damaged pancreatic acinar cells. Let's do a mnemonic recap. Reversible injury. Remember, swell. What does swell mean? Sodium water influx. Water accumulates, causing swelling, and then the ER swelling, loss of ribosomes, decreased protein synthesis. One you can use for irreversible damage is MELT. MELT standing for membrane damage, for example, plasma, mitochondria, or the lysosomes. E for enzyme leakage like troponin, ALT, or lipase. L for loss of the electron transport chain, meaning no ATP production. And T for terminal apoptosis triggered by cytochrome C. So let's go ahead through a couple USMLE practice questions. Remember to go from the very bottom, start with your last sentence, then read your options, then read the entire question. I'll give you a few moments, and then we'll go ahead and discuss the question. That's right, C was correct. So in myocardial infarction, ischemia causes irreversible injury characterized by plasma membrane damage, leading to leakage of cardiac troponins into the bloodstream. Troponin 1 is a specific biomarker for cardiac injury. Why are others incorrect? A. Sodium-potassium pump failure occurs during reversible injury. B. Ribosomal detachment occurs during reversible injury. D. Mitochondrial swelling without cytochrome C release is a feature of reversible. Let's go ahead to the next question. I'll give you a few minutes and then we'll come back. All right, if you chose A, activation of lysosomal enzymes due to calcium overload, that is correct. That is because in acute pancreatitis, irreversible injury leads to lysosomal membrane damage and calcium overload, causing the release and activation of pancreatic enzymes like amylase and lipase, which digest the pancreas itself. B, why is it not correct? Cytochrome C release triggers apoptosis but does not explain enzyme leakage in acute pancreatitis. C, sodium-potassium pump failure occurs in reversible injury. D, ribosomal detachment is a feature in reversible injury. Let's go ahead and do one more question. I'll give you a few minutes and then we'll come back. All right, if you chose C, reversible injury with impaired iron homeostasis and lipid metabolism, that was correct. This is because the biopsy findings of cellular swelling and fatty change are hallmarks of reversible injury. Why are the others incorrect? A, lysosomal membrane damage is a feature of irreversible injury. B, mitochondrial membrane rupture is a hallmark of irreversible injury. D, plasma membrane leakage signifies irreversible injury. So that concludes our video for today. If you found this helpful, be sure to like our video and visit www.thehealingpowerofnature.com for the best study materials on the market. We appreciate your support and thank you again.